Hello and welcome everyone, this is Calebovitsch coming to you with another episode of Deck Check, that's right, and we have a new campaign in Eternal card game already in the game client that is called Awakening, aka the 9.5 set. In it we have 21 new cards, brand new cards, and these are some cool cards, some amazing cards, some well-designed cards, but there are some cards in this game that I just have to build a deck around, and the Awakening campaign had one such card, Dr. Baleb, Dr. Zytrom. It is a card in Shadow that is the so-called community card of yours truly. That is a card that I have designed for Eternal card game with the help of Direwolf Digital, obviously. And yeah, that's one hell of a menace, that dude. Well, just wait and see what he does. And the card in question, in case you don't know that yet, is called Dr. Zytrom, aka Dr. Morty, or you can just call him Baleb. It is a forecasting Shadow 2/6 cultist with a very unique ability line that says enemy damage can't be deadly, and a summon ability of play a unit with cost 5 or less from the enemy void. It gets charge and flying, sacrifice it at the end of the turn. And obviously it goes into your void, so you can just later return it from your void with charge and flying like you would with any other Haunting Scream target. But this Haunting Scream targets your opponent's void. Now obviously there is a ton of cool units that cost 5 or less that are being played, but some of the units are more expensive than that as well. So Dr. Zytrom doesn't have the ability to resurrect just anything. He has his limitations, or does he? So I did 7-ish different versions of decks containing Dr. Zytrom in the last week, and I believe this one is the coolest one. It is not the best one, there is no best one, so to say, but this one has the best games for sure. If you look at this deck, you might think that you're not really gaining much from fire, because this is a Shadow Primal Fire deck, and you're not gaining that much from fire. But I also tried turning this into a strictly Fel deck, just substituting the fire cards for some primal cards. But somehow it was worse, or the results were worse, which, I mean, statistically speaking, it was not a huge sample, but well, yeah, this one is currently my favorite Dr. Zytrom deck. Now, in order for you to benefit from Dr. Zytrom, you need to either kill enemy units or mill enemy units, and then when you have them already, when the enemy void is filled, and you're grabbing them back and they go to your own void, then you can return them and do some more with that. So this is a mill-ish style of deck, but it's also very mid-range thanks to Dr. Zytrom and his ability. Let me just show you card by card of what it does. It is a value deck, I would say. When it comes to the aggro, tempo, control, combo, etc., I would say it's a value deck because Dr. Zytrom is a value unit, especially if you're screaming back from your opponent's void, a unit that has a very good either summon ability or an entomb ability. Also, when I was thinking about going for Dr. Zytrom, one of my thoughts was, okay, what are my main targets? So my main targets, cards, units, or unit categories that are usually in decks, are merchants. So I wanted to have a very good market for this one. That is, and running more than 2 colors allows you to have more cards available for your market. Now, this one has cards in all 3 colors, so unless you run into strictly Combri merchants or smugglers, then you should be able to just grab something from your market, or you can grab a broker from your opponent's void, or something else, like grab a jack, grab, well, a lot of cards. So given that this is a mill style of a deck, and you are making your opponent discard a lot of cards, and you don't want to just lose to aggro, The first unit I'm going to start up with is Dream Snatcher, the 2-costing Shadow 2/3 Radiant with Lifesteal. That says when the enemy player discards a non-power card, this gets +1 attack permanently. And the discarding part means either from their hand or from their deck to their void. And it doesn't matter if the opponent plays an effect that discards those cards or if you make the opponent discard those cards. Also an ultimate of pay 10 to make the enemy player discard the top 15 cards of their deck, but that usually doesn't happen. The ability is there, but in this deck, unfortunately, that does not happen as often. Two-Face has been a very pleasant surprise in most of the versions of Baleb decks that I was running. It is a 2-costing Shadow 2/1 Deadly Cultist. With Summon, the enemy player discards the top 2 cards of their deck, and Corrupted 1, which means when this dies, it leaves behind a Two-Face Shade, an 0/1 that dies at the end of your next turn, but you can also pay 1 and sacrifice the Shade to make the opponent mill 2 more cards. Blight Pass Smuggler, the 3-costing 1/4 Feln Berserk Merchant that allows you to swap a card from your hand with a blue or purple card in your market, so 100% of the market is available here. 4 copies of Strange Broker, the 3-costing Feln 2/4 Rogue Stranger, that says when a player plays a stranger, their enemy discards the top 4 cards of their deck. Also, you can pay 7 and exhaust this unit to play Permafrost on a non-stranger unit, and this comes in handy from time to time. There were other versions of Baleb decks where I was running Strange Broker as well, and I was running Unfamiliar Interloper, but for this one, influence is usually not the issue. I mean, you have 12 sources of blue, you have 12 sources of red, and you have 21 sources of shadow, so it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, the highest influence card is one in your market, that's Ikaria First Reaper, and the rest just needs double shadow, 1 fire, 1 primal, so it shouldn't be a huge bother. Hence, no Unfamiliar Interlopers in this list, but if you are running Strange Broker Dr. Zytrom list with higher influence demands, then I would believe Unfamiliar Interloper is a great addition to that deck. Next up, we have Dr. Zytrom. I've already talked a lot about this one. There are some other synergies with what Dr. Zytrom does. I mean, he does produce you with units that later die, so everything that you can later do to sacrifice those units, like, for example, if you have a Tazboo, the old version of Tazboo, the Forbidden, when one of your units dies, draw a card and take 1 damage. Or you could just be running some copies of Devour, sacrifice a unit to draw 2 cards and gain 2 health, etc, etc. So you can combo Dr. Zytrom further. This one focuses on just being able to steal some units that you have previously milled from them. Next up, we have 4 copies of Wasteland Broker. This is also a community card from Barry. It is a 4-costing 4/4 neutral merchant that on summon allows you to take a card from your market, add 3 more copies, which means 4 cards total, and shuffle them into the top 20 cards of your own deck, which prepares you for an enormous late game with Solitudes or Ikaria, so I'll get back to that later. Now, next up, when it comes to spells, we have 4 copies of Dark Return, the 1-costing iconic shadow spell. That says draw a unit from your void, it gets +1/+1 permanently. This is a great combo when you steal opposing units or with a lot of your own units that have a summon effect, summon effect, summon effect, summon effect, summon effect, and well, it is just a huge life-stealing Radiant. Next up, one of the best cards in this deck is actually Open Contract, the 1-costing Stone Scar spell that says kill a unit with cost 4 or less. Reduce the cost of each unit in its owner's deck by 1. And the cost reduction is actually more for your benefit than for your opponent's benefit, at least as far as this deck is concerned. Because if you take down a 6 cost down to a 5 cost, sure, the opponent can play it, but they're running a control or a mid-range deck and they can usually play it anyway, but you are able to steal those units with Zytrom. And that's going to come in very handy in the videos that you're going to see from games later on. Also, the cost reduction works well with Defile. This is a 2-costing Shadow fast spell that says kill an enemy unit with cost 3 or less, then steal it and put it in your void. Now, I've heard some voices that Defile is a non-bow with Dr. Zytrom, and that while that is true, Defile is not a non-bow within the confines of this deck. Because this deck is also running, sorry, not this one, it is also running Dark Returns. Which means if you don't have Dr. Zytrom, you can just Defile an opposing aggro unit, then Dark Return it and play it, and it's even bigger. In one of the games I was playing against a mono fire deck, I was able to Defile a volatile Grenadin. Obviously, I just allowed it to grow, so it was a 5/5. I promptly killed it with a Defile when the opponent played it on turn 2 or 3. Then I played Dark Return, replayed it as a 6/6, and the opponent chose not to take 4 damage, so this was actually a 9/9 unit. I know this is a high roll, this is top end of what you can do, of what you can go for, but yeah, if you're not running, if you don't draw Zytroms, you can still Defile and get more out of your Dark Returns. Also, the cost reduction for the opposing units work for future open contracts and for future Defiles. So all of this are smaller or bigger combos. And the opponent usually has enough units in their void from all the milling, from Two-Face and Strange Broker, so you don't need to worry. And well, if they're running unitless, then it doesn't matter anyway. Next up, 4 copies of Quarry, the 2-costing Stonescar Slow spell that says draw one of the top 2 cards of your deck, reduce its cost by 1, discard the other, so just your card filtering. And further on card filtering, you have 2 copies of Strategize, the 2-costing Primal spell that says draw 2 cards, then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. This is one of my favorite draw spells, or rather filtering spells, to put into mid-range decks, because it allows you to keep many more opening hands than you otherwise could, because right now, especially if you're going second and you only have 2 power in your hand, but you do have a Strategize, you can keep that hand, while otherwise I'm very, very hesitant to keep a 2 power opener. And well, if you've seen my streams, I keep yammering about it. 2 power hand? Nope, send back. And last but not least, 4 copies of Treachery. Now this could be the weakest card in the deck, but it somehow does work. It is a 2-costing Stonescar spell that says deal 2 damage to the enemy player. Then they discard a unit or site of your choice from their hand. Even if they don't have a unit or site in their hand, they still take 2 damage. Now instead of Treachery, you can run some more card draw, you can run some more filtering, you can run some more stuff in general. You can even go hardcore on Waylays. But this was in my initial version, and this card is also seen in the gameplay videos. And I mean, while it is not the best card you could put in here, it still holds its own. As far as the power base goes, I was trying to allow myself to play the Ikaria First Reaper that is in my market, which means 21 out of the 27 power cards are actually, 23 out of 27 give you Shadow, which should allow you to play Ikaria on 6 or 7 power. Also, 12 of you have 12 sources of both Primal and Fire. So we have 4 Skycrack Silexes. If we had Stonescar or Felon Silexes, obviously they would be here. And in both Chaos and Cunning, you have 4 Crests, 4 Seeds, 4 Crests, 4 Seeds. And the rest is Shadow Sigils. This power base also means that I am not running any other power filtering, power draw. Like, I'm not running Seek Powers because I only have Shadow Sigils. I'm not running Petitions because, as you can see, most of the deck is 2 power, and I want to just do some things on 1 power. And this deck can also get a little bit power intense later, which is why I went up from 25 to 27 power. And, well, last but not least, you can filter your access power of Strategizes and Quarries. And that's it. And honestly, Silexes mean that you can go higher on power, because you can play a power, then pay 2 to use the treasure trove to draw your next card, but your total power for your future turns is higher. Now, as far as the market goes, this is maybe not the perfect market, and you could substitute some cards for others, but you are running a permafrost here for sure. I don't want to run a permafrost main deck because I want to kill opposing units, whether they go to their void or our void. If they're in a void, it is better for this deck for sure. But if needs be, you can still grab it, and you can still, for just 1 power, stun the cursed unit for as long as it's cursed. Next up we have Caleb's Choice, the 2-costing Skycrag fast spell that either negates an enemy spell with a single faction or kills an enemy attachment with a single faction. And this is a very versatile card, so it comes in very handy in different situations. Now, the first grab from my market is usually Tome of Horrors, the 2-costing Felon Relic, which was my favorite card from Promises by Firelight, and one of my favorite cards in this game altogether. When one of your units deals damage, the enemy player discards that many cards from the top of their deck, which furthers your mill plan and your Zytrom plan. Also, once per turn, you may pay 4 to draw the top card of the enemy player's deck. And both sides of this card come into play, very handy for this deck. Now, as far as the top end goes, the first 3 are usually Blight Pest Smuggler targets, while the latter 2, and sometimes Tome of Horrors as well, are your usual broker targets. So we have your Icaria First Reaper, the 6-costing 6 Shadow 5/5 Flying Deadly Nightmare Valkyrie that on summon kills an enemy unit or site, and on entomb, the enemy player discards each spell from their hand. And also the finisher of Solitude, the 6-costing double shadow spell. The enemy player discards the top card of their deck for each card in their void. And in case you're wondering, this is alt artwork from one of the ECQs that was played several weeks or months ago. Anyway, this is Baleb the Menace, the deck. And now let's watch some games that I played with this deck earlier this week. And later we'll get back here and I will tell you a bit about what you could change here, what does work, what doesn't work, etc. Alright, we have our first contestant. As far as the first hand goes, it is just 2 power. It is kind of slow, but we do have the Strategize, and we do have all the colors that we need, which is double shadow, 1 fire, 1 primal. But as I said, this is a slow hand with no kill cards, with no interaction, so I'd rather go for the second one because it has a Defile. It can also double mill the opponent for 18 if they don't kill the first broker. The second Defile could also help. And Two-Face, no, I'd rather go for some non-depleted power like a Sigil. And the opponent is on Huru, which could be both, which could be either more aggro mid-range or more control. But the opponent is not doing much, so let's go for Dream Snatcher first before we go into milling the opponent with Strange Brokers. Valkyrie Enforcer silences our dude, but we can steal that. Attack, and afterwards just play Crest of Cunning. Seed of Cunning is not necessary here, so let's just end turn. Maveloft. Maveloft doesn't do much right now. Dark Return. We can return the Enforcer, which as you can already see is a combo for Defile. I mean a small combination for Defile. And here we can mill the opponent. And we can also just attack here, leaving Defile up. We don't need to strategize right now, we don't have that many cards in hand. And if the opponent plays a second one, we can do some cool fast interaction with our Defile. But as it goes, opponent just silences our other guy. Plays another power, doesn't do much more, so let's kill their flyer, allowing us to attack for more on the ground. Just checking the market and substituting a Strategize, which we don't need right now, for Tome of Horrors, attacking the opponent for 4 and making them mill 4 cards. which are more Maylovs, and Silver Blade Intrusion. Svetya Lightbringer, that one is usually a problem. Open Contract. Open Contract could kill their 2-1. Let's play the symbol. I'm just now contemplating killing their Maveloft. But no, instead I opted to just go for a 4/4 flying Valkyrie Enforcer that I will be able to play next turn. Also, I have 5 power in play, sorry, 5 attack in play, which means if they attack with Svetya, I just triple block, mill the opponent for 5, and just go with it like that. Helio the Skywinder. Sure. They draw just 2 cards. Surge. Alright. What do we do now? We could play the Flyer and Strange Broker and Crest of Chaos and pass turn, or we could draw a card from the opponent's deck, allow them to attack us for 2. Let's first see what's on top of our deck. Shadow Sigil is not really necessary. I opted to go for the Enforcer and Broker. But stealing a card would have also been okay. This was a good mill. I mean, they are running set 6 Island here, which could be a huge pain, especially given that I have no ways of killing that in this deck. Aside from the Market Zikaria. Opponent is pondering their next move, or their next couple of moves. Ania Arctic Sheriff. Now that's a value deck. And Ania Master Sleuth. Now we need to get rid of the smaller Ania's Aegis for sure. Yeah, Solitude doesn't do much here. We only have 5 shadows, so we cannot go for Zikaria. So here I'm considering just going open contract on that one. Then getting rid of their face Aegis. I could have also just attacked with a 1/4 to try mill the opponent for 1. And then after that, Tome of Horrors gets opponent's Aegis off for that 1 mill. And then we can steal a card from them. But instead I opted to just save my 1/4. I mean, the opponent does have a couple of hefty units in play already. Okay. We milled something there. Oh, they wanted Onslaught. That's why they kind of wasted their Maveloft. Well, they got a face Aegis and they got Aegis on their 3/2. So that is at least something. That's gotta count for something, right? Svetya Oreen of Kosul. Yeah, I would like to get rid of that. Dr. Zytrom, I presume. We could go for Maveloft. No, we can't go for Maveloft from their Void because they have face Aegis. We could attack first. I'm going to get a Maveloft Huntress from their Void. Or I just opted to go for a Permafrost on their Svetya, mainly because it says pay 8 and exhaust Svetya to draw all units from the top 4 cards of your deck, discard the rest. So if she cannot exhaust, well, then she cannot use her ability. So double Svetya, double Ania. The Huru Legends. It's cool how those Anias look like back to back. Vara's Angels. Svetya's Angels. Burspor. Now, speaking of Aegis units, that's a surprise. And another double surge from for Svetya. strategize. But do we want to strategize, or do we just want to take something from the market? Defile and broker. Broker is a body at least. Yeah, I went for a defile play, because if I can defile, for example, small Ania, that's a problem. If I can defile small Ania, then they lose face sieges. And if they attack with some units, we can also mill them. And then maybe Zytrom can come in handy. Now the question is, are they just attacking with the 10-10 or with some more? I mean, this situation doesn't look good, right? Bubble shield. Okay, bubble shield on that one, which means we can get rid of her. And they're done waiting, they're just attacking, which means I want to triple block the Burst Porfern and just chump the 10-10. No, I opted not to chump the 10-10. We are milling 5 cards. Okie doke. And then, if you take a closer look, we see that the opponent has a 5 costing 5/5 Helio in their void, which means we can Zytrom, we can grab the Helio, we can draw 3 cards because we've, amongst other things, stolen a primal symbol from their deck with Tome of Horrors earlier. Mill the opponent down to 31 cards. Play Crest of Cunning to see what's up there. Skycrag Silex, which means we will have 3+6 power next turn to play a Solitude. We mill the opponent some more. Now the opponent has a huge void. You can see it on the height of the stack of their cards. I mean, we can also click and see that it's almost 30 cards. And yeah, the play is to play the power, play Smuggler, play Solitude, and win. The opponent probably saw that. Also, a cool note, there is an achievement, and this is the first time I saw it, there is an achievement in the game for the Good Doctor, the Good Doctor, steal a 5-cost unit from the enemy void with Dr. Zytrom, and the honor goes to Helio. Alright. That was game number 1. On to game number 2. Okie doke. We have some power, we have some removal, we have a unit, sure. A Legion. Okay, I think I want to go for Seed of Chaos, because then if we need 3 power, then we can play a non-depleted Skycrag Silex, but in the end I opted to go the other way. Will probably not matter, because next turn I still want to go Dream Snatcher, Seed of Chaos. But I think the other play could have been better. Now, opponent sporting Aurelian colors and playing Pitfall Trap makes me want to think something, something, rat, something, something. Dream Snatcher, I'm thinking on the power, but it doesn't matter which of these two. Hailstorm, sure. Dr. Zytrom. Okay, let's see what the opponent has in hand with that treachery. Great Valley Smuggler and not one but two Consuming Greeds. Well, given that I have two Defiles, I can get both Rust Fiends out from the field, because Rust Fiends are 2-cost units. So, don't care about that one. Those ones. Yeah, and Consuming Greed, killing their relic, or rather sacrificing their relic. Crest of Cunning, Wasteland Broker is okay. Let's kill the Rust Fiend. Let's have power up for the other Rust Fiend. Another Great Valley Smuggler, sure. Okie doke. Let's play the Silex, let's play Wasteland Broker, let's grab... At this point I'm thinking about Tome of Horrors. To mill the opponent for a bit, and well, we will have those tomes early enough. But also remember, first play Broker, then play Treasure Trove, because well, then you have a chance of drawing that Tome of Horrors, exactly. And then we would just have to wait a turn. Linrise Protection, you gain an Aegis draw card. Scratch, scratch. First time I'm seeing that card being played, or first-ish. Okay, Tome of Horrors, that's nice. I'm thinking about playing the first one. Oh, play two. Oh yes, because then I can Defile, get the opposing Aegis off, the Smuggler stays in the opponent's void, and if we attack for 4, we mill 8 cards from them. Oh, so they're running a Bottled Storm... Waystone Gate deck with Relic Sacrifice. Okay, not my cup of tea, but maybe it's theirs. And Dark Return, great. Well, Dr. Zytrom can probably steal something like a Severin from the opponent. And that means we have an Amethyst Ring. We can use the Amethyst Ring. Just ping for 1, but it's still damage. We can attack for 8, mill the opponent for 16. Tomes of Horror in multiple are really terrifying. Sure. Lethrai Courtier, sure. Bottled Storm, okay. They get a power. They play the power. They get a Treasure Trove. They sacrifice the relic to kill the 4/4. They draw 3 cards of the Entomb ability on Bottled Storm. Sure, sure. But what we can do is play Dark Return. Get Severin. Play Severin as a 5/6 flying charge unit. Now Tome of Horrors just costs 1 because Severin is so awesome. We attack with both for 7, we mill for 21. Opponent is left with just 8 cards in their deck. Oh yeah. I mean, they're also just on 5 health, which means the next attack from Severin should kill them. But I believe we can mill them as well. Even if we don't have any cards in hand, we can still start stealing stuff, etc. Okay. Opponent, your library is burning. And you're still drawing cards. But you almost have nothing there. Like 5 cards, at most. Would you like to draw more? Okay, so Severin is dead. down to 4 cards. So yeah, I'm gonna go all stops here. So Tome of Horrors, steal one of them. It's a Porcelain Mask. Discard something from the opponent's hand. That's a Consuming Greed. And attack for 2 and mill for 6. They don't have 6, so they die at the end of our turn. Alright, that's game number 2. Let's head on over to game number 3. Now, before this game, I did a couple of changes to the deck. So you're going to see 2 different cards in the market, but also I took out Strategizes, put in Menace Chance, took out 2 Shadow Sigils for 1 Primal and 1 Fire Sigil, and for the last 2 slots, because I reduced the power total to 25, so I took out 4 Shadow Sigils, included 1 Fire, 1 Primal Sigil, and in the last 2 slots I put in Haunting Screams. I'm going to show you the other version at the end of this video as well. Anyway, playing against what is going to be a mono shadow deck. Unfortunately, the power base doesn't allow us to play Treachery on turn 2, which is kind of a bummer, but we will do it on turn 3. Yes, yes, you Warcry. Yeah, Seed of Chaos is the only way, Caleb. Yes, we want to go for Treachery. There is an Icaria there. That's a good toss. And we also kill that one with Open Contract, decreasing the cost of any further units the opponent has in their deck by 1. And the effect is once again going to come into play very handily. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just play Shadow Sigil. Yeah, don't be shy. And Strange Broker and mill the opponent for 4. And one of those cards is a 5 costing Icaria First Reaper. Now that's a good target for the good doctor. Am I right? Doctor Value Doctor. Incoming. We just need to draw him. Two-Face. Sure. Well, we do have a Haunting Scream and a Dark Return in hand, so thank you, opponent, I guess. Anyway, Quarry, something up. And it is the good doctor indeed. Now let's defile that deadly and start attacking. Sure. And place it. Place it. In cold blood. The stranger is dead. Okay. I think in this case I just go Smuggler for Tome of Horrors as my go-to card. Okay, not much is happening. So let me just attack the opponent twice. No, once. Okay. Steal something. Amethyst Waystone is cool. And we can return the cheaper Two-Face that we made cheaper with our open contract and then defiled. And that all allows us to play it this turn. How wonderful. But it also is getting annihilated. Okie doke. Another Zikari and an even-handed golem. Because we've not seen it and or not guessed it by now. Even-handed golems right now just cost 1. And Zikari's cost 5. So, sorry opponent, you're not drawing anything. But what they do have is Pale Rider's Timepiece, making that golem into a slightly better unit. But this is where all the value is going to come in. So brace yourselves. This is going to be the Value Doctor. Dream Snatcher, Dr. Zytrom, getting Icaria First Reaper, killing the opponent's unit, attacking them for 5, milling them for 5, making Dream Snatcher bigger, and at the end of our turn, Icaria dies, and if the opponent has a spell in their hand, well, it's gone as well, and it was an Annihilate. So I guess bye-bye, opponent. Thanks for playing. Also, we can Dark Return that Zytrom, play it for 5, well, you get the gist. Anyway, let's head back on top and talk about the deck some more. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so this is Baleb the Menace, playing Dr. Zytrom in the Menace colors. Now, as I've already said, I did make some changes here and there. Can't really say which deck version is better, but I'm just gonna show you visually what the changes were. So as I said, I took out Strategizes and some Shadow Sigils. I included a Fire Sigil, a Primal Sigil, 4 Menace Chants, and 2 Haunting Screams. Also, given that the power base now is much worse for Icaria, I took Icaria out. I remember I also took Solitude out, and in those places, speaking of Menace, Silverblade Menace, but also you could go for a Savage Incursion for your market. So this is another version of Baleb the Menace. You could also go lower on Treacheries, higher on Haunting Screams. There is another cool combination that you might want to consider, but one that makes the deck slightly heavier, because the best Haunting Scream interaction is actually, in my opinion, Rindra, the newest one from Argent Depths, Rindra Infiltrator. And with you running more non-shadow power, there is a higher chance for you to just play Rindra. So the thing is, if you scream Rindra, you have already played a spell this turn. So the opponent discards a card from their hand, and you're attacking them with a 6/7 flying Lifestealer with charge, which is a huge deal. It is a huge tempo deal. It is a huge value deal. So you can keep that in mind. Although in that version, I'm not sure. Maybe instead of Wasteland Brokers, those ones, and instead of Treacheries, like one more Haunting Scream, maybe a bit more power. As you can see, if you keep the base of the deck intact, which is kind of most of this unit base, and you keep those Dark Returns, Open Contracts, Defiles, maybe those Quarries, maybe those Strategizes, the power base more or less the same. I like this market much better with Silverblade Menace and Savage Incursion over Solitude and Zytrom, and these two are much easier to play. You can see that you have a lot of tools at your disposal. You can just pick and choose which version of a Dr. Zytrom deck you want to be running. And this is going to be it for this session. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you're enjoying the show and would like to show some support to this channel, just click on subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Well, maybe 5 seconds of your time, or 15 if you can't find the subscribe button. And it takes you much less time than listening to me talk about you subscribing to this channel. Yes, yes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Calebovitsch out. See you next time.